Give me a couple more minutes. Anybody? Well, we'll do some pre-start surveys. Who's heard of the term MOOC or MOOC before? All right, I'm probably preaching the converted here. Anybody know how to pronounce it?
MOOC.
MOOC. I went to a talk by a Scotsman the other day, saying MOOC was quite good.
What is it?
What does it actually stand for?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see. Okay, well, first of all, what I've done is I've done a blog posting with a few bullet points in it, and I tweeted the address to the event address, or if you just type in MOOCs with books, you'll find all this stuff. So, get started. I should say I'm Tom Worthington. I'm a computer consultant in Canberra and an adjunct lecturer at the Australian National University. Over that way a bit. Okay. What is a MOOC? It's an acronym for Massively Open Online Course. Have I got that right around, or is it online open? And it's a buzzword that's been around for not very long, and it's become prominent in educational circles in the last few months in higher education, universities, places like that. Those of us who have been doing online education for years all shook our heads and said, what's this all about? So I'm still trying to work out how much of it is real substance, how much of it is just hype. So massive. So instead of having dozens, as I do, of students online, or perhaps hundreds, as some places have, we're talking about hundreds of thousands, or potentially millions of students doing something open. Now in this sense, we're talking about no scholastic or financial barriers. So in the sense that anybody can enroll in the course. You don't have to pay someone money, and you don't have to say, oh, I'm qualified because I've got this. Anybody just goes and enrolls in the course. It doesn't necessarily mean that the material is open in the sense of open access, Creative Commons. So,
Or accessibility.
Accessibility is an issue we'll get onto as well. So, it doesn't mean that you can necessarily take a copy of this course material that's online and fiddle with it and use it to teach some other course. It may well be that the people providing it will say that you're not allowed to do that, or you'll have to pay us money. But it's open to the student to use. It's online, so we're talking about using the internet. That may seem obvious, but for students who are in remote parts of Australia or in some developing countries, the nature of the course may mean that they can't use it online because of the limits on their internet access. And it's a course, and mainly here it's referring to semester-long units, about 12 weeks, about the size of a normal university unit, what in the US context is called a course. So it's not a whole degree or whatever. It's sort of 12 weeks, quarter of a full-time load unit. I find it interesting. Okay, so there's not many that would be 12 weeks, but we're not talking about workplace training where it might be 1 hour unit of instruction. It's a larger chunk of material. And the other part about that is it's called a course, but generally you don't get a credential at the end of it. You might get a certificate to say you finished it, you did the little quizzes. But in most cases at the moment, if you go along to the university or employer with what they gave you at the end of this course, they'll say that's very interesting, but it doesn't count very much. It might show you're enthusiastic and you've done some introductory stuff, but in general it doesn't count on the proper course. issues that people are going through at the moment. Please put up your hand or shout out comments along the way. I'll try to repeat them for purposes of the...
You're going well.
I'm going well. Thank you for that comment. Now, what we have are some consortia of MOOC suppliers. So these are universities or others who get together to provide these things. I've just listed 4 there: Udacity, which I haven't had anything to do with. I'm not even sure whether it's, I assume it's a not-for-profit thing. Does anybody know?
I think that one's a profit making, whereas the others are
Okay, so the comment from the back was Udacity's probably a for-profit one.
Yeah, I think it's a com one.
Yeah. edX, which my institution, the ANU, joined very recently, which is a non-profit consortium between a number of big US universities, and then others have joined. Coursera, which is another not-for-profit.
Yeah, it's free.
Yeah. And there's one which I only found out recently called Task Central, which provides a catalogue of MOOC courses that other people provide. So it's just a list of other people's things, and no doubt there's lots more of those things. Some examples of courses, because I'm in the computer business, there's a couple. There's a Harvard Introduction to Computer Science and MIT Introduction to Computer Science, both from the edX consortium, both with similar names, both based on traditional university introductory courses. Interesting with the different flavours. So they're in the same MOOC edX consortium, but the separate universities are providing the courses, and they look a bit different. They have a different flavour. And so this is one place where these things are coming from. Typically recorded lectures, slideshows with audio, quizzes and so forth. Interestingly, for me, the MIT one actually has a textbook to go with it. So, slightly traditional sort of thing. If you want to find out about these things, and you want to actually do them, some of these things are based on open source software. So, a couple of days ago, edX released X-Block software, which is part of what they use. So you can now go and get that. Class to Go from Stanford, I believe, is also open source and available. And there's an introduction to Class to Go to give instructors some idea of how it works and so forth. Although I must admit I had trouble doing it. There's also an infamous Coursera course on how to do Coursera courses, which you might have read about in the media, where there were all sorts of problems. But hopefully they fixed it up by now. Some of those problems so massive. So you've got a lot of students, and the software needs to work, and that's an issue. So with the current learning management systems like Moodle, Blackboard, which are used, with tens of thousands of students, they can strain under the load. I go in to log in to see how my student's going, and on the login screen it gives me a sign that says system is very busy,
Can't connect it now.
and not a lot of time is it green, everything's okay, because the students are on there all the time studying and it's loaded. And that has some implications for the way we design software for these systems. We might need to do them in a different way to cope with large number of students. It also has implications for the way we provide support to students. So unlike when I have 24 students in a class, and I can help them with their administrative problems and their course content problems, if you have 1 million students, you'll need to use a different approach. And ways for the students to interact with each other. And the infamous Coursera course problem was partly because they they said to the students, go to this system to organise yourself into groups. The system could only handle 50 simultaneous users. So if there were 100,000 people trying to access, and 50 could get through the door, that was trouble. So you need a ways to do that. Because they're open, that provides the opportunity to provide help to students in different ways, where they can go to people outside the course to help. But also you need to provide ways to guide students with these things, because it's sort of more exposed. Yes?
I can instantly see two problems with that. One is, because it's so massive and so open, you get a situation where there has to be some sort of peering, so that you'll wind up with small groups of people who know each other, and they can propagate misconceptions. And the other is that, traditionally in something like a first year course, you get some cohort of people who cheat. And of course, cheating is pointless in this context because the course isn't necessarily recognised, so you're only doing yourself a disservice when you cheat. That doesn't stop people from cheating.
So do you think both of those things happen in the northern country?
No, they do. But the thing is, because this is massive and open, it amplifies the problem and makes it possibly less visible as well. So it may be the case that you only catch that sort of stuff further down the track, or it may be because you've got such a big thing you have to deal with, there is no decent way of dealing with the issue and you're forced to ignore it. I don't know. I'm just raising the question.
Between students, you can pick up the food that they cooperate and work on answers.
Yeah.
With 50,000, you've got no hope. If someone wants to copy it, someone wants to work and flip it, you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but
what does it matter?
But so there were two things there. One is students get together and they might pass on the wrong information as it was, honestly. And the other one is they might collude. I think educators need to understand that they're not the fountain of all wisdom, and students talking to each other is a good idea. How do you provide them with some resources and guidance so that they will get at least partly what you think is the right idea? The one on cheating has already been issued with some of these MOOCs where they're not for assessment, but they still have quizzes. It doesn't make sense to cheat, but still within a short time of a new take-home exam type thing being released, there are discussions of that. And maybe that means you can have a different educational style which allows for that, rather than trying to reproduce exam style conditions. There's another comment about that.
Yeah, I mean, throw something out. If people collude and still learn, does it really matter?
It's called crowdsourcing.
Yeah. Exactly. So you go, oh, it's a student, they're colluding. No, they're crowdsourcing.
And this is exactly right. I mean, I've done 2 courses through Coursera, and through the Intro to Astronomy course, which was actually an Intro to Astrophysics, bloody hard maths. The discussion forum was prolific, but it was right there, right there, and being checked by the lecturer and the support staff, and people were working together to resolve things, and there was brilliant assistance to each other. And none of it was any different from what you would have if you were an in-person course student. Students sitting down together and working through things and learning from each other. And if you don't, it doesn't stick with you, but you're still popping the right answer in, again, none of it is different from if you were doing it in person. And the only thing that is different at the end is you've got a certificate which makes you feel warm and fuzzy, but doesn't actually count towards a qualification. So who cares?
Well, the ethics consortium does in the fine print have an optional extra feature, which is you go to a commercially run examination centre and sit a test under exam conditions to get something. And it'd be interesting to see how many students go to the trouble to do that, and how many universities actually offer that and recognise that. But I guess I would see the assessment as being one of the optional extras. 5 minutes?
Yep.
Right. Okay. we have 5 minutes left. One of the optional extras. So we need ways to support students online. The other one I think is interesting is how do you fit this into a conventional university? Do you rebuild the whole university and provide this as an optional extra? Yesterday the ANU Vice Chancellor basically said this was an experiment and they weren't expecting to offer more than perhaps a dozen of these sorts of MOOCs, and that they were to give students a flavour of what the university was about and help promote it. And at this stage it's not seen as a central part of getting a degree or something like that. I guess I have to talk about books because the talk was supposed to be books with books. That was just to say, I suggest we could literally use books as part of this, because these online systems where you tend to give students a little dribble of information, give them a little quiz, give them another dribble, they can get lost in the detail. And the book can be a conventional paper textbook, or I use electronic books in a sort of, but the idea being you give them the structure of the whole thing, and that those who want to can whiz ahead or go back or whatever. But also the having conventional structure, as the gentleman at the back said. These courses, apart from using all this technology underneath, they're using the same sort of pedagogy as you do for courses these days. And we could do a bit more automation of feedback. So you have automated quizzes, and of course the groups. In terms of software, I think we could, as well as use new MOOC learning management systems, adapt things like Moodle and Blackboard to this environment with extra plugins to do this sort of thing, and modularize our courses so you have the sort of the public MOOC version and plug it into the university version of the course. And we should allow for offline use for students who are in remote places, and accessibility for the disabled. I've tried to do a number of these MOOC courses where they say, oh, you do get sub-captions if you can't hear it, you do get text if you can't read the video. But what I'm presented with is a video flash thing, and I'm on a slow link. I can't get any of these supposed accessible things. And in others, they just haven't bothered. So I think you need to do that sort of thing. Anybody offering this course, if they don't make it accessible, could have a complaint made against them under Australian legislation for discriminating against people with disability. That was about all. Burning issues, down back there.
Can I just chuck in about Brian's course, which you'll be doing early this year, Brian Schmidt, Introduction to Astrophysics. I interviewed him about it recently for Australian Science .au. I just edited it and then uploaded it. But one of the things he explained is that it's the exact same course that his full-time students will be doing at the exact same time. The only difference is the face-to-face. But anyone who's interested in it, recommended they do a course on algebra and one on calculus beforehand, because it will be a lot of maths to these students.
One of the things I learned last year when I did the ANU's higher education certificate was how hard it is to be a student. And you know, I think one of the things we need to remind people, these courses have where only a small percentage of the people who start finish. We need to remind people and perhaps prepare people that learning, even if you've got video and all that, is still hard work. I think that's, I suppose I should give you an example of what a book looks like. That's my electronic textbook for my ICT sustainability course at the ANU, which is of course all in web format. That's the public version for when the students have managed to get into the learning management system yet. Any other last comments?
Yeah, so I suppose, I mean, it's a philosophical point. Is a lot of the discourse that I'm interpreting anyway over the last couple of years seems like the idea of democratising access to education or access to knowledge. But it doesn't seem that there's quite as much of an idea of democratising understanding of the knowledge or success in education. So, you know, it's, you know, one thing to be able to make it, you know, to make it accessible, but it's quite another thing to actually design something such that somebody's got a decent chance of succeeding.
Yes, I'm not sure that everybody's interested with MOOCs in democratising education. I think, like the early days of the internet and the web, there are some aiming for a sort of a free utopia, and others using it for marketing and, you know, how can we make a buck out of this? So I think it's something where all of those things are happening. I guess what interests me in a way is it will force a lot of issues about education into the open, about who can get it and what implicit discrimination there is underneath, what students really need to succeed, and make them much more explicit when it's all sort of out there online.
Money into the educational stuff rather than
Yes, and who's going to educate people in how to design these things? If you want more on the educational, pedagogical underpinnings of all this stuff, I've got the sort of papers and demonstrations of these educational issues. But we're going to have a bit of fun.
One had their hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
How much does it cost to make one of these courses? Say I want a 12-week course, 3 hours in this topic. How much would it cost me to get that course?
If you want a 12-week course.
3 hours a week.
Yeah. When I did my certificate in video design for education, the cost was around $1,000 a minute. So multiply that by the number of minutes of video. We're talking $100,000, $250,000, I would say, to develop a proper course. I don't get much of that as the education.
And how long does it take you to develop the course?
Well, the Green ICT course